If you started playing Bills Must Be Paid thinking it was just a matter of going around smashing little piggy banks, you've probably realized by now that things run a lot deeper than that. Here, every run matters, every decision weighs heavy, and a single mistake can throw you straight into bankruptcy. After testing a lot of things, smashing a lot of piggy banks, and going broke more times than I'd like to admit, I've put together 10 advanced tips that will genuinely accelerate your progress, optimize your runs, and get you off the ground much faster. If you want to stop struggling with stamina, earn more money per run, and truly understand the game's systems, stick with me until the end. I'm Matthew, and the video is about to start. This is one of the first things that seems simple, but it completely changes the way you play. Stamina is everything in Bills Must Be Paid. At the beginning, you get that urge to just click like a maniac, smashing everything as fast as possible, except that drains your energy on an absurd level and cuts your run way too short. The point is to understand that hitting hard isn't enough. You need to hit better. Unthinking consecutive strikes are basically a waste of stamina, and that's where one of the most important upgrades in the game comes in, the so-called grip strength. It looks like just another ordinary upgrade, but in practice it redefines your efficiency. When you increase your grip, every single hit gets stronger, which means fewer hits to smash each piggy bank. And fewer hits mean less stamina consumed. In other words, you not only hit harder, but you extend your entire run without even realizing it. It's a very strong chain reaction. Once I started prioritizing grip instead of just upgrading whatever random thing popped up, my runs simply started yielding so much more. You spend more time active, smash more piggy banks, and in the end, walk away with a lot more money. It's that kind of adjustment that seems small, but in practice, it's what separates an average run from a truly efficient one. This hammer tip is exactly the kind of mechanic that separates people who just play on autopilot from those who truly understand the game's rhythm. What it reveals is that the game doesn't want you stuck in a single build the whole time, but rather that you read the situation and adapt your tool. Something many people overlook in incremental games, but which here makes all the difference in efficiency. Strategic switching works because each hammer was designed with a clear purpose. The high-speed, wide-area ones are perfect for those hordes of lazy piggies that show up when you need to clear things fast before the situation gets out of hand. Meanwhile, the high-crit, smaller radius hammers shine when the focus is on eliminating single, valuable targets, the ones that give a higher return in coins or progress, and where every hit really needs to count. Interestingly, this trade-off system, speed and range versus critical damage and precision, creates a layer of decision-making that turns a seemingly simple game into something much more tactical. Instead of just passive upgrades, you need to pay attention to the type of enemy spawning and switch hammers at the right time, almost like an action game disguised as an incremental one. In practice, mastering this mechanic means you'll pay your bills faster, accumulate resources more efficiently, and most importantly, feel like you're playing smartly, not just clicking mindlessly. It's one of those tips that seem small, but completely change the experience, and they fit the game's spirit perfectly. Smashing piggy banks, yes, but with strategy to stay debt-free. Ignoring bills might seem like a strategic decision at first, especially when you're trying to grow fast, but the game punishes this in a very quiet and cruel way. When the collector steps in, you don't just lose in that moment, you compromise your entire future. The real impact comes from this constant deduction from your earnings. Losing anywhere between 20% and 50% of everything you generate simply destroys any sense of progress. It's the kind of penalty that doesn't seem absurd at the time, but after a few minutes you realize your economy has flatlined. You start grinding more, investing more, and still end up going nowhere. The most efficient way to play, in practice, is to treat every bill as a strategic priority. I like to always keep a separate reserve, almost like untouchable money, especially when the due date is approaching. It's not about playing on the edge all the time, it's about having control. This small discipline completely alters the game's pacing. At the end of the day, this turns Bills Must Be Paid into something much more tactical than it appears. It's not just about making more money, it's about not sabotaging your own progression. Avoiding the collector isn't just a good practice, it's practically mandatory if you want to truly scale up without getting stuck in a recovery cycle. Whenever you pay a bill on time, the game gives you 3 options, and it seems simple. But these decisions will completely shape your progress in the upcoming runs. At the beginning, it's very tempting to grab anything that reduces costs or makes the current moment easier, like spending less stamina or making some mechanic cheaper. But that is very short-term thinking. It works right then and there, but it doesn't scale well as the game starts demanding more efficiency. What truly makes a difference is prioritizing multipliers, more loot, higher crit chance, more speed. These bonuses grow right along with you. The stronger your build gets, the more these multipliers explode your earnings per run, creating that snowball effect every incremental game needs to flow well. Once you start thinking this way, the game changes. You stop playing just to survive the run and start playing to truly scale. And suddenly, runs that used to feel slow start yielding way more because every perk choice is pushing your progress forward, not just slapping a temporary band-aid on a hole. This planned bankruptcy mechanic is that moment when the game looks you in the eyes and says, "Trust me, lose everything now to get way stronger later." Instead of treating bankruptcy as a failure, the game turns it into a tool for progress. Something I love to see in well-designed incremental games because it messes with the player's psychology and rewards those brave enough to reset. The planning comes in right there. You don't declare bankruptcy at just any moment, but rather when you've paid off enough bills to generate a solid amount of legacy points. These points are the currency of the post-bankruptcy phase, and it's with them that you buy rings and bracelets that permanently boost your hand's attributes, meaning even starting from zero, you come back stronger, faster, and more efficient than in the previous round. What makes this decision so interesting is the emotional and strategic trade-off. On one hand, you see all your progress vanish. On the other, you know you're building a permanent foundation that will accelerate all your future runs. It's a classic lose-to-win cycle. But in Bills Must Be Paid, it gets a special twist because the game's theme is precisely being in debt and trying to get out of the red. So bankruptcy stops being a failure and becomes part of the strategy to get rid of bills. In practice, mastering this system means knowing the perfect timing, not resetting too early and wasting potential, but also not waiting so long that you get stuck in an inefficient run. When you nail this balance, every bankruptcy becomes a stepping stone, and the rings and bracelets you acquire with legacy points are proof that in this game, sometimes the best way to pay your bills is to accept breaking them first, and rebuilding stronger. At first, you really feel like activating any boost the moment it becomes available, just to speed things up. But in Bills Must Be Paid, using the caffeine bonus indiscriminately is basically wasting one of the strongest resources you have. The big secret lies in those absurd spikes of attack speed. When you activate it on a normal screen, you earn a bit more money, but nothing out of the ordinary. Now, when the screen is full of rare piggies, the game turns into something else. It's a real multiplier effect. You turn seconds into an explosion of progress. I started treating coffee as a burst ability, not a constant buff. I hold on to it until that moment when the game clearly opens a window of opportunity. When rares start showing up in quantity, that's when it's worth activating everything and extracting maximum value. It's almost like landing a guaranteed critical hit at the right timing. And the most interesting part is that the caffeine tree isn't just about speed, but also about stamina, sustain, and recovery. This lets you endure those intense moments without locking up. In the end, it's not just about being faster, it's about choosing precisely when to be absurdly efficient. In the heat of the moment, it's tempting to grab upgrades that look strong right off the bat, especially those that increase pure damage, or cosmetics that give an immediate feeling of progress. But the truth is, at the start of a new prestige cycle, what really matters is building the foundation that will make your economy explode later on. Focusing on energy regeneration and luck right in your first few purchases is a move of strategic patience. Stamina lets you hit more times without getting stuck waiting for a recharge, and luck increases your chances of finding rare items or special coins that accelerate resource gains. Together, these two attributes create the famous snowball effect. The more you hit, the more resources you get. The more resources, the more upgrades you buy. And the more upgrades, the faster the cycle repeats. Ignoring cosmetic upgrades and pure damage early on might feel counterintuitive, especially because the game tempts you with visual rewards and bigger numbers on screen. But the reality is that without a solid foundation of regen and luck, you'll reach a point where progress stalls. And having the prettiest hammer or the highest damage won't help if you can't keep up the pace of the match. It's like building a house. You don't start with the roof, you start with the foundation. At the end of the day, this defensive approach is an investment in your future within the same run. You sacrifice a bit of immediate power and visual flair to ensure that, midway and late cycle, your piggy smashing machine is running at maximum capacity, with stamina always available and luck favoring valuable drops. It's that classic lesson from incrementals. What seems weaker at first is often what takes you the furthest, and in Bills Must Be Paid, where every second counts to pay bills before bankruptcy. That makes all the difference. The first thing you learn is that ignoring a bill triggers the collector, who comes and takes a heavy slice of your earnings. somewhere between 20% and 50%, or even more depending on the stage. This already forces you to stay alert, because letting it roll too long gets expensive. But the trick lies precisely in realizing that paying immediately isn't always the best option. In the full game, bankruptcy generates legacy or prestige points based on the total amount of bills you've already paid off, so it's worth holding onto a bill until the last safe moment, especially if you're on a high loot run and have stamina to spare to keep the rhythm going. It's a risk calculation. The longer you delay, the higher your immediate earning potential, but also the closer the collector gets to catching you. On the other hand, there are situations where paying early is the right play, mainly when the perk you get for clearing the bill is strong enough to turn the tide of the match, or when it guarantees you more legacy points that will accelerate your upcoming runs. In those cases, the long-term benefit outweighs the marginal gain of waiting a few more seconds or minutes. The game puts you in a constant balance between the now and the later, and mastering this is an essential part of the strategy. In the end, what this mechanic demands is that you read the state of your run, how much stamina you have, what the loot rate is, how close the next big bill is, and what your current perk offers. Sometimes the best decision is to pay and move on with a solid bonus. Other times it's letting the bill get close to bursting to extract maximum value before the reset. It's this kind of trade-off that turns the game from a simple smash piggy banks into a game where every timing decision counts, and where knowing how to calculate risk is just as important as having the best upgrades. In my view, this is what transforms the game from hit everything that moves into something with actual field reading. Every piggy has a different behavior and value, and treating them all the same way is the fastest route to running out of stamina at the absolute worst moment. Starting with the tourist, he's big, lazy, and most importantly, restores your stamina when you break him. That makes him top priority whenever you're tired, because in a game where smashing piggy banks costs energy, he's basically your walking stamina potion. The woody, on the other hand, is the opposite. Slow, tanky, a true sinkhole for strikes. He's only worth it once you already have high damage or piercing. Before that, focusing on him is wasting time and stamina that could go to more profitable targets. The Piñata and El Loco demand different decisions. The Piñata is pure variance. It might drop almost nothing, or an absurd jackpot. So it's only worth the hunt once you've invested in crit, luck, and loot bonuses, because that's when the odds tilt in your favor. El Loco, in turn, is erratic, moves in a zigzag, and does unpredictable charges, but has a design detail many people don't notice. The first hit always lands. In other words, instead of trying to keep up with his crazy movement, you use that guaranteed hit as an opening and take care of him fast before he runs away. Finally, rare piggies. They are worth the chase, always, but with a massive asterisk. Before you go sprinting after one, you need to look at your stamina level and the clock on your active bill, because dying of exhaustion or letting the collector catch you while hunting a rare is the most frustrating way to ruin a good run. Every piggy is a decision, and those who learn to read these priorities pay their bills much faster than those who just swing blindly. When your stamina is low and your bill is high, you hit a classic crossroads. Risk it all to try for one last big payout, or play it safe and lock in what you've already achieved. This is where reading the state of the game becomes more important than any upgrade you've bought. If you have an active double loot or high crit perk and a good group of piggies appears on screen, the math sometimes favors the risk. In these cases, pushing your luck can give you the final push that turns an average run into something legendary, especially if spawns are favorable and you manage to extract maximum value before the bill bursts. But this requires confidence. You need to believe your damage, luck, and timing will hold things together until the very last second. On the other hand, if you don't have those perks or the spawns aren't cooperating, the smart play is to pay the bill, take the reward perk, and use what's left in the skill tree to start planning the next run. There's no shame in backing off. On the contrary, knowing when to stop is what separates those who break the game from those who get broken by it. The game doesn't punish caution, it punishes the stubbornness of insisting on a risk that the math has already proven isn't worth it. At the end of the day, bills must be paid rewards those who read the current state as a complete system: stamina plus spawn types, bill deadline plus active perks. It's not just about smashing on autopilot until the collector catches you. It's about making conscious decisions based on every variable in your hand. And that exact layer of depth is what makes the game shine. Every run's finale turns into a tiny game of chess, where whoever thinks one move ahead walks away with fuller pockets and a stronger legacy.